Hello and welcome to Feel Good Friday. It's your monthly dose of positivity right here on our Facebook and YouTube channels. And this week I've got three liars, and I'm going to introduce them. But before I do, I want you to know that today you can learn how to really be a part of making a difference in helping end this pandemic. Welcome to the show, Volunteer Odyssey's Executive Director and Assistant Executive Director. Did I get that right, Rachel?
Close enough. I'll take it.
Welcome to the show, guys. How are you doing?
Good.
Great. Thank you for having us today.
Happy Friday. I know you all have been very busy, and we're going to spend some time talking about your current work and your work that's coming up in the next month or so. But before we do that, I want to share this video that we shot just yesterday about the work you're doing to help provide volunteers for the vaccine rollout in our community. So take a look.
Today we are at the Germantown vaccination site and we are vaccinating the community from COVID. We've had about 1,000 volunteers sign up to help, and we usually need about 300 people in a given week. And today we're vaccinating about 2,300 people in the community. Volunteers have very simple jobs, but they're very important. It's things like making sure that the people here are scheduled to be here for their shots. It's giving out paperwork, making sure that everything is clean and ready to go, and helping us direct traffic to make sure everything runs really smoothly.
I think it gives me an overall glimpse of the process of vaccination distribution to a community, and I feel it really very gratifying.
We went through a lot of thinking and planning to try and make the best possible volunteer experience out at this vaccination site. So we made sure to think through. Volunteers even understood where to park, what to expect, know in advance what their role would be, and they're dressed for the weather like today. So we're just really proud to partner with City of Germantown and have the opportunity to think through all of those little details that add up to an amazing volunteer experience.
And it's really an amazing experience when you see a lot of people with all those smiling faces put an end to this pandemic.
I think we've all felt how hard it is to stay home and to feel like there's not much we can do. And this is a way for me and for volunteers to be really proactive, vaccinating our community and hopefully getting back to the things that we love. And it's been an amazing opportunity that's really meaningful, and I'm just so glad that we could be part of it.
Wow, that is amazing. Welcome back, Dr. Sarah Pechnick, and Rachel. Rachel, I'm going to butcher your last name. Rachel Ozols. Tell us a little bit about, first off, what does Volunteer Odyssey do for the Memphis community, and why is your work so important?
Yeah, and thank you so much for shooting that video, Lauren. You and your team do such an amazing job of capturing, the story of what we're doing and why it's so important. At Volunteer Odyssey, we are a volunteer center for the Memphis area. Our goal is to meet community needs through volunteerism. And I think this COVID vaccination volunteer opportunity is the perfect example of why volunteers are so critically important in our community right now.
And I know you work very hard to build partnerships with nonprofits. Rachel, can you talk a little bit about what it means to work with a nonprofit and make the volunteer experience matter for the volunteer, because you want them to come back, right? Especially in times like this.
Exactly. We're trying to make things as meaningful as possible and make connections between the volunteer and the nonprofit. Our goal at the end of the day is to get people coming back and to fall in love with, a volunteer opportunity that speaks to them. So we're trying to set up nonprofits and the volunteers to have the best experience they can have and keep them coming back.
Well, we witnessed that yesterday. Sarah, I want you to speak to how this all came to be, because in December, when we found out that vaccines were going to be made available to our communities, it was sort of like an all hands on deck. We're not sure when we're going to get it. We're not exactly sure how it's going to roll out. So when does City of Germantown call Volunteer Odyssey and say, hey, we need 1,000 volunteers tomorrow? Like, how did that go down for you guys?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's been such a whirlwind. I'm trying to remember exactly when that happened. I think we first connected in February about this opportunity, and we're really fortunate that we've been working with City of Germantown for several years now, and the mayor and his team have just been incredible to work with. They're always thinking about how do we do everything the best that we possibly can, and so they called us, and we already had a great relationship, and we had an opportunity to think through every aspect of volunteering with them, from the logistics, the shift times, how we made sure that it was meaningful and organized. And we just absolutely love working with the City of Germantown, especially on such a meaningful project.
And the need is going to be there for a while, from what it sounds like, right? So how many volunteers are you going to be supplying or in need of right now? What is that looking like for you?
Yeah, we need a lot of volunteers. If you are in the Memphis area and you are watching this, please come help. We need about 340 volunteers every week just at the Germantown site to run those vaccinations. And I think it's important to note that it's not vaccinating people who live in Germantown. This is part of the larger city and county effort. And volunteers can come from all over the area too. And we need you to help make sure that the site is running efficiently and smoothly so we can get as many people vaccinated as possible.
And Sarah, I've added this to the bottom of the screen. VolunteerOdyssey.com is where folks can go. And there's not just this need, right? We need volunteers for all kinds of things. Rachel, can you speak to that part of this? Because the pandemic only just spotlighted the fact that we know our nonprofits need volunteers to help make things keep happening in their organizations, specifically those who are serving folks whose needs have gone up in the pandemic.
Yeah, I think, we're kind of sitting in this still virtual and remote world, but I think it's very important that people remember that there are still in-person opportunities, and our partners are doing a fantastic job keeping people safe. The need for food has gone up exponentially. So the opportunities are there. They're on our platform. All safety protocols are being followed. But please don't forget that though there are the virtual and remote opportunities, we still have partners that need people there right now.
On the ground, indeed. And I was there yesterday. The protocols are absolutely being followed. It's very safe. And I think it's really fulfilling work. The volunteers that we talked to said to be a part of the solution when for the last year, we sort of all kind of felt hopeless and helpless at times, not sure what to do or how to help. This is a real concrete way to make a difference and be a part of it. And just to clarify, you're not administering the vaccine, right? There's no shots being given or being distributed by the volunteers, right?
Right. There are medical professionals and medical volunteers who are giving out the shots. That's correct. And so specifically what we're recruiting for at this particular site are non-medical volunteers. So if you're a little afraid of needles, like I am, you don't have to be anywhere near the shot tent. There are lots of things that you can do that don't require any medical expertise at all.
I felt like we needed to note that because I know that not everybody's super excited about watching the needles and all those things. We don't need to get into the details.
Right.
But it's a real concrete way. You can check out, I have it there on the website below here, volunteerodyssey.com. There's a link to this specific, but all the volunteer opportunities you have on your calendar. And this is really, I decided to have you guys on today because I wanted to have you on next month because it's National Volunteer Month, which is a fitting time to have you. But I realize you have a lot of opportunities that need to be filled right now, and you have a big event coming up next month. Rachel, can you speak to Virtual Volunteer Day and what that's going to look like for folks and how they can volunteer from home?
I would love to. So we came up with this concept last year, sort of at the beginning of this whole pandemic. And we wanted to find a way to engage volunteers from a safe distance. As we were talking about, our nonprofits still have a lot of high needs. So on April 23rd, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., we're going to welcome 8 of our nonprofit partners who have come up with some really creative virtual projects that you can easily do with very little materials from your home or office, with your kids, with your employees. Really, anyone can get involved. We have projects like Memphis Rocks is going to teach you how to leave no trace in your favorite park or even in your backyard. We have card campaign projects, something called Bare Necessities with Catholic Charities of West Tennessee. So things you can do super easily with very few items that can give back to some of our favorite local nonprofits. So again, that's April 23rd, 9 to 5 on our Facebook page. You'll learn how to do everything. It's a super simple way to get involved.
Right there. There's the information.
Thank you.
April 23rd. During the day, you're gonna have videos throughout the day with these opportunities. Of course, encouraging folks to post their opportunities. More opportunities are at volunteerodyssey.com. Y'all, let's talk about this. Volunteering is a little bit selfish, right? In a time like this, volunteers are needed, but you should enjoy it, right? It shouldn't be something that's not a fun experience.
Right. Yeah. I remember, Lauren, the first time we talked about that idea, that kind of shocks people that we say that volunteering should be at least a little bit selfish. And what we mean by that is that you should like it. You should like something about where you are volunteering or why you are volunteering. Because if you just don't enjoy it, you're not going to keep coming back, and we need you to come back. So we don't mean that volunteering in and of itself is selfish. We mean that there should be something about it that speaks to you. And that's what we're here to do. That's how we want to help. So we want to help you find something that is really meaningful, that speaks to you and that you enjoy, so that you keep coming back, because we really, really need people to meet these community needs.
And, you know, I think I always want to touch on this part of volunteering, because it's hard to talk about it without looking like you're bragging. Like, look at me, I'm doing this really cool, good thing. But sharing, when you share that you're volunteering, you're sharing about the nonprofit you're working with, and you're sort of spreading their mission too. Can you all speak to that? Because I know you love when you hear volunteer stories, then you can share those on your social media channels and your website too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure, Lauren, we're preaching to the choir. Like, you and your team know exactly why the stories are so important. And so if you are volunteering somewhere, one of the best things that you can do for that organization is to be a recruiter for them. You know, don't hide the fact that you're volunteering. You don't have to bring it up as, I'm so proud of myself because I went and did such and such. You say, hey, I went and volunteered at this vaccination site. I had an amazing experience and they need more volunteers. Will you come with me? And so taking on the ownership of that ambassador, that recruiter role, is exactly what we need to get more volunteers into the system and meeting all of these critical needs that we have in the community.
That's great. Thank you for that answer. And yes, we love telling stories here at Forever Ready. So of course I'm going to ask you that question. Rachel, I know you're not supposed to pick favorites. So just instead, tell me about a recent volunteer experience that you've had or that the team has had, what you did and what it was like to continue to serve in a time of need like this.
Yeah, so most recently, the team and I went over to Mid-South Food Bank, and we helped with their assembly line for kits for some of the seniors who need food delivered. And we just got into a line and we knocked out a few hundred boxes of non-perishable goods. And just the impact that they can show you immediately and working together on something like that was incredible. Great opportunity to volunteer.
And I saw that on social media. So that's why I ask you the question. See, you share, and others want to know more about it. Final question for you both. You know, Volunteer Odyssey is a nonprofit. You do introduce others to opportunities to volunteer, but you need support as well, right? So let's talk about that. How can folks support you? Obviously, we said share your stories, but are there other ways?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So obviously volunteering, getting on our platform, engaging with our social medias to let other people know about volunteering. And then I would be missed to say donating. So the more that we have the funds to get volunteers out there, to be out there ourselves, the better we can serve even more nonprofits in the community. So donations are always welcome and appreciated, and volunteers as well.
And of course, you can donate at the website too. So there are volunteer opportunities, volunteer stories, and a spot to donate so you can support this wonderful cause. And of course, I want to remind folks, mark your calendars for April 23rd, right? Virtual Volunteer Day. So if you're not quite ready to get out and do things in person, this is all stuff you can do from home in your neighborhood. And you can, you may even be introduced to some new nonprofits that you want to check out once things start to open back up again. So that's how you can participate, volunteerodyssey.com. Sarah, Rachel, it's been so great having you on the show today. Thank you for all you do for our community. I know that you have a passion for your work, and it's really cool to hear other people impacted by it as well.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren, and thank you for everything you and your team do in the community. I know our nonprofits in Memphis really love working with you, and thank you so much for having us on today and helping us recruit more volunteers.
Thanks, y'all. Have a great weekend. Try to get some rest in between recruiting thousands of volunteers to help save the world, one volunteer experience at a time.
I'm going to use that.
There you go. And I got it at the bottom of the screen here, guys. This is April 23rd. Mark your calendars. There'll be more information on social media. Of course, I would be, I should tell you that we're helping produce that day. So we'll also be sharing it on our social media channels. And we're really excited for Volunteer Odyssey to do their second virtual volunteer day. Now, I said we had 3 guests on the show today. This next guest is Allison Wong from our Chicago office. What's up, Allison?
Hi, Lauren.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
We're feeling good today, sending good vibes to everyone that's watching. Listen, I wanted to bring Allison on because she and Charlie have been really busy in Chicago helping continue to execute some live events. And recently we had a really successful event that's got a really great story. And I thought that no better person to tell that story than Allison. So talk about this. This was a client out of New Jersey.
Yeah, New Jersey. And we always talk about the bad things that have come from the pandemic, right? I think one good thing that came out of the pandemic for Charlie and I was getting introduced to this nonprofit, Passaic County CASA. Because if it weren't for the pandemic, we probably wouldn't have worked with them. So just one silver lining. But they are in New Jersey, and Passaic County CASA. CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates. So their volunteers work with kids that are in the foster child care system. And volunteers are advocates for these children in the system. They, meet with the kids on a monthly basis. They get to know their story. They get to know what's going on in their lives, and they advocate for those kids in court. And thankfully, we were able to tell some really great stories for CASA for their virtual event. Presented some challenges with the pandemic, not being able to go there and to, film these stories ourselves like we normally would do. But we found creative solutions as we always do, and we came up with a really great story.
Carter came to CASA after the world as he knew it had been turned upside down.
When I was pretty much taken away and brought here, I remember that this woman, she said that I had to go with her for safety reasons.
He was a child that was left alone so much that he had to fend for himself all the time.
Take your time.
6 years ago, Carter was my first case. I met him at the pool, and he was open and very warm, very inviting, and very interactive. Each month, we would have a conversation. We play games.
She would ask me how my day was. She would open up and ask questions about what happened back in Patterson, since that's where I lived before.
Sharon knew, that she had to get to know everything that she could about this case. She visited Carter's foster home. She visited his school. She got to know his teacher. She went to his games, basketball games, football games. She was there to listen. She was there to understand what he was going through, and to make sure that she was able to represent his best interests at all times. She stood up for Carter.
Well, since the courtroom is terrifying in my part, she told me you got this. I know you can do this. And yeah, she would just try to do whatever she could in order for me to be happy and confident.
If Sharon wasn't our CASA worker from the get-go, I don't think we might be in the situation where I was adopting him.
I was able to adopt Carter on March 20th, 2017.
Carter's adoption day was incredibly emotional. It was a celebration and a reminder of the power of volunteers like Sharon to make a difference in a child's life.
This is the card he gave me. And it says, "You are the best CASA worker ever, and I really appreciate you. Love, Carter."
Sharon, you have been such a wonderful person that came into our lives, and I can't thank you enough.
She was almost like a therapist, but 3 times better. I feel happy as can be because now I'm not left home alone. I have everything I ever wanted, really.
Wow. That's all I say every time I watch that story, Allison. Wow.
I know. Me too. I loved telling that story so much. Charlie and I so enjoyed meeting Carter and his mom and his little brother. You saw him in some of the shots, but Carter is such a well-spoken, creative, outgoing kid. And it's just so great to see that he's happy and settled, and, you know, that his story turned out just all right for him.
Yeah. Great family, great sense of family in that. And I think one of the things that I really love about that story, besides just that it's such a good story, is that we had to overcome some challenges with that piece, right? We had to do those interviews over, recording them over Zoom, and then put together the piece and coordinate someone to go shoot some of that video of them interacting. And yet still the emotion and the love and care of that story comes through and shines every single time.
Yeah, definitely. You know, it was a bummer not being able to go there. You know, when Charlie and I were planning it, I feel like we both were like, oh, we just want to go there. We want to meet them in person and do it how we, you know, would normally do this shoot. But it was totally fine. It totally worked out doing it, you know, the interviews on Zoom, and we ended up finding a freelance videographer in the New Jersey area who could go and get those shots of Carter and everyone playing together. So we found ways to make it work, and I guess I couldn't imagine it happening any other way now.
I know, isn't it funny what the pandemic has done to all of us?
Yeah.
We're so grateful to them for trusting us to help tell their story. That was one of several videos that played during the live event we produced for them a few weeks ago. And they had a tremendous amount of support come through on that fundraiser. Am I correct?
Yeah, it was such a success. And I think any nonprofit, when they're, you know, deciding to pivot to doing a virtual fundraiser, there's just a lot of uncertainties. You don't know who's going to watch. Are they going to have trouble tuning in? Are they going to be able to figure out how to donate or participate in your silent auction? And I think CASA staff members had those worries, but they put in so much work to make it successful. They had a great turnout night of, and they met their goal. So that's great.
That's what you love to hear.
Yeah.
And this story is relatively timeless. They can share the story outside of the event. It'll continue to draw support. And I think it also sort of tugs at your heartstrings to make you better understand the impact of their work. And to me, that's ultimately the goal of all of this, is to raise more awareness of work that they're doing. And hopefully that translates into donations, right?
Yes,
I'm sure
that's what we hope for.
That's what they would say. Well, thanks to you and Charlie for your work on that piece. I know that we've all been presented with a lot of storytelling challenges, hence why Feel Good Friday was born, y'all. So here we are, continuing to iterate, continuing to make sure the world hears these positive stories and knows that there is good happening out in the world, and that we can all be a part of that, whether it's volunteering or sharing your story or just spreading a little bit of joy to other people. That's how this whole show was born. And on that note, take care of each other this weekend. You too, Charlie and Allison.
Thank you.
Good in the world. And we'll see you next month for another edition of Feel Good Friday.